Talk, 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 talk. Art of the Zodiac presents Talk, Talk, Talk.
All day. And it's a funny thing with planets too that we've realized, because now we've been doing it for over a year. And it's like, once we've committed to a chart and we all know what our planets are, things just start happening. And we start really embodying that. So it's great, but then it's kind of hard because through the whole process of rehearsals, which is at least a month, you're kind of carrying this energy of whatever the chart is with you. And I think I had just been, I was like the moon in Scorpio during a new moon in the 6th house, and I had been dealing with medical trauma and a ton of isolation. And what's nice about those shows too is like there is a good catharsis, so I felt like I was able to really work through a lot of stuff that I'd been doing on my own and release it after that. So, but yeah, I was very drained that day.
Yeah, and Martha seemed to be too. The two of you in your corner were like, oh man. I was like, truly thank you. Thank you for carrying this cathartic weight for the rest of us.
No problem. Blair was like, I'm sorry. Blair, who runs the group, Blair Bogan, was like, I'm sorry that you were sitting in the dark the whole time, like in the corner. I was like, no, it was perfect. I would not have wanted to be anywhere else.
When I was thinking about making notes for this podcast, I wanted to be like very specific around not just talking to you about planets or like not just talking to you about astrology, but there we are. I opened with it. So I will move on to other places. But for those who are listening and are like, what are they talking about? Like, I don't know astrology. What is this planets? Can you talk to me a little bit about that project?
Yeah, absolutely. It was started by our director, Blair Bogan, who's an astrologer, and goes under the moniker Sister Bride. And Blair's been doing astrology for like upwards of 13 years and has been doing clown, I think, around the same amount of time. And I think just she's got a lot of Gemini in her chart. And I think combining the two has been something that she's been interested in a while. And then last year, she decided to kind of bring a cohort together. So it's a group of us, which are like a group of like queer and non-binary and femme clowns who also either study astrology or were like interested in the esoteric. And we all come together and we take a chart of the moment from when the show starts, or sometimes we do people's birth charts if they would like that. And we each embody a planet, and then we kind of act out what the chart is doing as the planets. So it has been like a really wild way to learn more about astrology. And I think also just like working with planets and feeling their energies has really like opened up, I think, a lot for all of us, just in terms of like our humanity. Anyways, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's just like a group of clowns. We take the chart and then we act it out as the planets.
So many questions within that. But the one thing you said was that you have acted out people's charts. Like, are you for hire for a certain amount?
Yeah, we are. We have a website. I think it's linked to Blair's website, which is like Sister Bride. I think if you do sisterbride.com, it works. But yeah, we are available for hire. We've done a couple of birth charts and it's been really interesting.
That is so wild. I would feel a little like when some people have fear about seeing an astrologer because they're like, oh, I don't want to hear the future, or right, like I don't want to hear bad things. I feel like I would be a little afraid that you would just like bring out everything inside of me that I was trying to conceal my whole life.
Totally. I think like it's interesting too, because our process for like a chart versus someone else's birth chart, we do talk a lot about like, okay, this is somebody and they're gonna be there. So let's not lean in as hard, and like what's a way to do this that's loving and not just so intense. So we definitely keep that in mind that like, okay, we are working with a human right now with like feelings, and what's the most loving way to do this?
Oh my God, I love it. I just want to sort of pause to say that it's literally been one of my favorite. It's one of my seeing. I think I've seen you 3 times now, the planets perform, and it's
Yeah.
like definitely one of my favorite things about LA.
Oh,
Period.
wow.
But it's
Wow.
also really like shaped the way that I think about astrology. Like,
Mm.
'cause sometimes I don't know. Oh, hi, cat.
Oh,
Um,
a couple.
oh, cute.
We have 3.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh, they're gonna make appearances. This is great.
Yeah.
Um, I think as an astrologer, it's easy to get like stuck in a rut or really feel like astrology, just reading so many books
Yeah.
can feel a little lifeless, but the way that
Mm.
you really like embody it in this way that feels really fun and playful, like like during the Aries eclipse, was it
Oh,
the Aries
yeah.
solar eclipse? It was like dark night of the soul for me. It was like horrible. And then like I like dragged myself to the theater to see you perform. And you there was this, it was you had in the performance, not you specifically, because were you Saturn in that one as well?
Yeah, it was Saturn and Pisces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, which you were amazing,
Oh, thank
but
you.
there sort of was it Blair? Who acted out the ego death of the sun? It was so amazing.
Um, oh, who was the son that one? It might have, I think it was Blair. It was Blair, yeah.
Oh, it was like this a cathartic experience. We're like, "Oh, this is funny and entertaining," but also I felt like something had been lifted from me. Like, in that
Yeah.
moment, I was like, "Ugh." This is exactly you've just contextualized everything that I've been through,
Yeah.
and, like, there was definitely this sort of magic, like, what is it? Like an effigy moment, right? Where I felt like all
Mhm.
of my my pain had been dissolved in that
Oh,
performance.
I love hearing that. That's so nice. I can't wait to share with the group because sometimes it's crazy because we're in it. And so we don't really know what the experience is like. And I
Yeah.
think being so locked into, you're trying to feel what's happening, but also like intellectualize, if that's a word,
Yeah.
intellectualize what's
Oh, yeah.
happening. Um, and so a lot of the times, like after the performance, I'm like, okay, I don't know what that was or if it was successful. And it's always, I think it's been a nice practice and trust because it seems to always resonate with the audience, even if we don't know what's going on. Um, and I think even, yeah, astrologically, it's just like trusting the planets to come through, even if we feel like we can't harness them, because it's not really about us harnessing. I think it's a balance of us doing that, but also like just listening and being available. So it makes me happy that it hits because sometimes we just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, like you've mentioned before, do you feel kind of like the planets are acting through you? You're like, "I don't quite know what's happening, but I'm being sort of, used as a conduit for."
For sure. And I think also, like, speaking of the astrology of everything, like
Mhm.
building in the astrology that we're building has also, I think, helped strengthen and deepen my understanding because for that show too, we were building it during the eclipse and like during some retrograde, like during a Mercury retrograde. And it was like, and the chart itself was like a weird space in the eclipse where it was kind of like not certain. It was like this in between kind of we don't know what's happening day. And so like we as a group like could not come to a conclusion like day before, even day of. We're like, well, maybe we should do this instead, or maybe we should do this. And it just was like, yeah, it's kind of like the astrology just happens to you. And so I think there is like this thing of like we are the planets and we're trying with like our interpretation and our own like artistic visions to like bring forth what it feels like to us or what we think it might be. But yeah, once we're in there and locked in, it kind of just all happens because it is happening in the moment. So we're just like,
Yeah.
and before we start, Blair is like, just release, nothing's wrong. If it is, I'll correct you. And also like have fun. And yeah, I think submission always has been like a nice um practice for the group too.
Yeah. I've never, so Blair is the director, is that the official role?
Yeah, yeah.
It's fascinating, and look at me, I'm sorry, I swear I'm gonna move on, but
No, it's okay. I'm happy to talk
I'm
about
such a fan.
it.
Seeing Blair, like, now I'm thinking about this, like, Blair direct, you feel, and I don't know how I is a performer if you feel this way, but watching, I feel like I'm watching a ritual with
Yeah,
this sort of, like, maestro, like, who's,
yeah,
like, conducting all of this, like, because there's this way that she sort of, like, is constantly, like, bringing it back to the center, like, you feel like, you get the feeling watching this that there's a bit of chaos, but that
yeah.
it's ultimately, like, there is a guiding force.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I think her role she is like the most experienced astrologer out
Yeah.
of all of us. And there's 11 of us, so sometimes if we're all there her role is astrologer, but I think
Yeah.
it comes out no matter what planet she's playing if she's filling in like the last show that we did she was Mercury. So it also is like yeah, she's like able to just guide us through. But yeah, it is ritual. I think it's hard not to just accept that it is.
Has it shaped, so for you, which came first? Performing? I mean, I'm assuming performing came before astrology.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's weird. I mean, I grew up in LA,
Okay.
so astrology was around all the time. And I had like I think so from an early age, just an interest in it, but nothing where I was like studying super hard. But I was always like, yeah. And then yeah, in, like, college, I got really into Susan Miller, of course, and was reading all of her, horoscopes, and so it was, like, kind of in the background, but nothing that I really took charge of until a few years ago, but I started performing more seriously in February, it'll be 10 years ago. So, they were definitely separate avenues, um, and I definitely was putting most focus on, performing and then started more seriously studying astrology in 2020 as like a lot of millennials have. Yeah.
Do you think, your work with planets has shaped who you are as an astrologer and maybe opened some things up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what planets has like showed me a lot is that like the astrology is always happening, whether or not we as humans are like tapped into it or choose to be tapped into it, that
Mm.
it's like constant, and that gives me a relief. And at times when like as an astrologer I just feel kind of burnt out and I'm like I can't check in, and am I bad for not studying as much or not being as like in it, but it's just like it's happening, it's with me, I am experiencing it. Me being burnt out is probably me experiencing it, especially because I have an Aries moon in the sixth, so most definitely it is. But yeah, and I think also, you know, both Blair just studying under her because she's like my main teacher. She's like the only teacher I've had. Um, and also working with her, it's just opened up my eyes to the world of astrology, just like really having no idea, consuming a lot of pop astrology for a while.
Mm.
And then realizing, like, oh, this is an ancient practice. It's like the longest story we've all been telling. Of course, there's like this giant world, like consuming it and speaking about it. So I think like planets has just helped me feel. I think what's nice about planets is it helps me feel a part of the astrology, even though it's all happening. That was very meandering, but yeah,
No, that wasn't meandering at all. I was actually thinking about something, S.J. Anderson, who's a brilliant astrologer, said in a recent conversation I had with him, that
Mm,
he reminded me that the astrology is happening, just as you said, whether or not we're watching it or making commentary on it, right? Like
yeah,
we just can't escape it. And so, to some degree, we are always acting out as an expression of it.
yeah,
And I think that that's why maybe I like planets so much. There's this or maybe I like, but I'm curious to know. if that's maybe part of is it almost like it almost seems like thinking about this, I'm sorry, I'm like backtracking, like a
No.
self-care practice is being able to sort of because it reminds me very much of like astro drama, which comes from like
Mm.
psychodrama, right? So even if you're feeling overwhelmed, you have this really great ability to actually tap into the sky.
Yeah, definitely. I think it has been a really comforting space for all of us to be really honest about where we're at.
Mhm.
And whether or not that's coming from an astrological space, because there is a different level of experience with astrology for everybody. It's definitely been an avenue or like a yeah, an avenue through which we can express what's going on with ourselves. So it does feel very much like self-care and group care. And it's
Yeah.
been like seeing it's funny because like we are 10 or 11 people and there are like 10 planets plus the comets and everything. But seeing that the planets are constantly working together, having conversations with one another, maybe working against each other, having tough geometry, it's a nice thing, I guess, that whether intentionally or not, to kind of model after, to remember that, like, as a cohort, we also can have these relationships with one another, like easier times or tougher times with miscommunication or like really beautiful, bountiful expressions of communication. Like it's been a nice blueprint, I think, too, just to remember. Um, that if the planets can work together, that like we can also do it too. It feels really mycelial too at the same time. It's been really nice, like, yeah, creating community in such a like condensed way.
Um, I love the phrase tough geometry.
Yeah.
It's so good. And if the planets can get along, so can we.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And mycelial,
Yeah.
when you said that, all I could think about was something else I wanted to touch on, and so maybe we'll go here, is
Yeah.
when I saw you, under your, um, one-person performance of,
Yeah.
God Vessel,
Yeah.
and you were like, "I'm on mushrooms right now."
Yeah.
Like, "Are they?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I take mushrooms right before the show, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, I do take mushrooms right before the show.
And that's just God Vessel. Do you take mushrooms before planets?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. Yeah.
You're just high on the planets for planets, but God
Yeah.
Vessel, it's
It's like, yeah, I'm like, we're about to open up. It's been a really beautiful practice of a show. And it's been I think the for me, the big part of the show, while I'm also like protecting myself a lot
yeah.
beforehand and during, is like kind of just opening myself up to be like a channel for whichever of my, very, pure white light guides to come in and ancestors to come in and just like voice and play and have a good time. And it's been like over a year that I've done it, but I'm going to be having my last performance for a while this weekend, just because as wonderful as a practice as it was to really open myself up, there's also a part of me that I'm like, oh, I'm also not present. And I think as a human right now, considering just like my own transformation and also where we're at astrologically and also very physically, it's time to kind of check in with self a little bit more. So I'm glad I have had this like year to really be a vessel. But yeah, but it's like time, it's telling me it's time to end and I'm like, okay, I'll miss you.
For those just out of my own curiosity, for those in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, when is this last performance and where?
It's gonna be Saturday, November, I guess, 16th. So in a couple days at 2 p.m. and it's gonna be at Public Displays of Altadena. Um, it's on Fair Oaks in Altadena. It's where I normally do the show. But this is a part of like the theater's having like a telethon thing, and they're having about like 8.5 hours of comedy, like back to back to back to back. And so I've got an hour slot, and it's going to be a really weird version because I have about 25 props in the show, and I normally do like a big like setup and everything, and I'm going to have to do it all at once. So I think it's going to be a fun one, a fun like goodbye.
Okay, I'm really excited about this. And for those who have no idea what we're talking about, I will give this preface. So I'm new to Los Angeles, and coming here, I learned like that the clown comedy movement is very big. People in LA love clown. I'm still like, I always struggle how to describe it to people.
Yeah.
But I think seeing God Vessel, I felt like I was in clown church.
Yeah.
Right? So like how I
Oh.
felt was I was entertained. I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then I was like, oh my God, please don't call on me. Lots of
Yeah.
audience interaction.
Yeah.
And then somehow I left like crying.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like, is that what clown is? Because that feels like maybe a working definition of clown.
I think it's weird because clown is so it's very specific, and it's also very broad. So I think
Okay.
it's really how the individual approaches it. It does have like a very specific history that is not, the best. It's, created by and for white cis straight men. So there's going to be problems in that. And there are very specific like dynamics within it. But I think how it's evolved in Los Angeles, it's kind of like this like comedically tinged performance art, is how I like to see it. And I think like, yeah, my show's definitely like clown forward. And then I think is trying to be like a amalgamation of like, I don't know, all of the performance and experiences I've had like my whole life. So, it includes some stand up, thinly veiled. There's like music in it too. So, yeah, I think clown is definitely like a physical experience, but it is really, you are correct to say you don't know what it is, because I don't really know. And it's evasive, it's nice because it's kind of like this practice of submission, for sure. Submission to the audience, submission to the moment.
And again, I'm really good at tangents, so buckle up. I was talking to a friend in New York who's also talking about like the New York clown scene, and I was trying to I'm like, I just know these great comedians and they're clowns, but there's no makeup. And my friend was like, but sometimes there's makeup. Like
Yeah.
clowns are also like Barnum and Bailey's clowns. And I was
Mhm.
like, so where do you stand on the makeup, no makeup? Is this a point of conversation among clowns?
I think it's just a different style. There's like a style called red nose, which is more classic, like,
Okay.
yeah, circus clown that you see. And it's just a different way of doing clown. So I think what's nice about the clown scene out here is that there are so many different avenues that you could go down. But I don't think it's really, I mean, at least not from my point of view, I don't feel like contention between like what is more valid as a clown practice. I'm like, hey, whatever makes you happy, as long as there's consent, because I think sometimes that's an issue. But as long as there's consent and you're like reading the room and listening, I'm like, hey, do what you need to do.
All of that aside, so there's the clown part, but then I'll get back to the part of God Vessel where I left crying.
Yeah.
I felt like I was like, fuck, like this is so absurd and so hilarious, but it got real dark,
Yeah.
I mean, not dark in that like um I felt you were like fucking with us, but like,
Yeah.
wow, life is dark and this is being channeled right now and it's really sad. And there was also a little bit of hope I left with.
Yeah.
How you said that this is your last performance for a while you do a check-in, but on your end, like, what are those
Yeah.
performances all about? Because it feels like, again, you're just
Yeah.
giving so much.
Yeah, I think that has kind of been the precipice, is to give and provide a space for us all to kind of just address because of the fast-paced capitalistic, AI driven technological world that we live in. It kind of, so much of our survival is based in us like constantly moving and not really checking in with self, and checking in with self becomes like its own kind of job or rebellion. And it's not easy to access all of the time. And so I think like a major point with the show is just like having a space to kind of be present and feel the things that we might have trapped. And for me, has definitely been a space for me to just exercise a lot of like internal congestion. And hopefully like by me doing that too, it helps everybody kind of be able to take a big sneeze or or like cathartic metaphorical like vomit. It's so the show that I did before this show that kind of turned into God Vessel was called Fart Piss Puke, and it was definitely a lot darker, way more punishing to the audience. I like threw up at the end of the show, like on the stage, which is like so crazy that I did that. And so it was like kind of like it was not letting anyone in. It was just about like me working through things and being like, this is what I have to deal with. And then after doing that for a while, I was like, what if I allowed people, what if we shared community in this space and we were all together? So yeah, I would say I can't remember the question, but oh yeah, the yeah, I think the intention is just to create community. And like, it's on a Sunday morning, like it's all very intentional also to be like a holy church space, especially for those of us who like, I grew up Christian in the church, and I think I've been very blessed to have had my a really healthy, beautiful, gorgeous relationship with a higher power, and holding on to that as I've transitioned into queerness, as I've transitioned into trans and less being in the church. And but I also know I have my own trauma around that. And I know that like, it's inevitable, I think, living in America specifically, but even in this world, that Christianity and religion is so gunked up into capitalism and control and power. And I think the nugget of it all is holy and beautiful, that there is something greater than ourselves. And that shouldn't be forgotten. And I think it allows humanity have a lot of peace, to just remember that, we are a part of a fabric of something bigger. But I think it's hard to accept that when it's embroiled into, harm. And so I think I also just wanted to provide a space to be like, we can still tap into, a higher power, into God, um, in a way that's like is honest with where we're at. And you don't have to like cut parts of yourself off in order to do that. And it's actually really, I think, radical to take back, the love of God. And then, I go into the show and I'm like, God is like just what we are. So, it's not like this. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah.
Well, being there, I got the sincere feeling that it was a very interactive performance. Like
Hmm.
I'd only been once, but it I had the impression that a lot of people came regularly, right? There was this
Yeah.
like energy in the room that people were very much participating and
Yeah.
again having their own, range of emotions and cathartic experiences. And so hearing that you're um stopping makes me a little
Yeah.
sad because I'm like, "Oh, like, that feel like it really serves something." And I'm not telling you not to, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if there's something that you're going to replace it with, right? Even though it was hard on you, were there parts of it that really sort of gave you fulfilled you in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I really love doing the show, and it does make me sad to kind of at this time where it feels like community and connectedness is like more important than ever to like sort of take away this space that's about that. I think for me personally, like performance has been really integral to my life, especially over the last decade. And especially practicing astrology more seriously and like being with my own transformation more. I am a completely different person than I was like a month ago, a year ago, a few years ago. And there's so much of myself that like I just don't know is there, who that is. And
Mhm.
I think when it comes to me and my relationship with performance, it's always very spiritual. Like it's just how it is for me. And I think in order to like be present and have that exchange, I have to be like right with myself. And I have just been a bit drained and not connected. And I think it's just because there's like parts of self um that just haven't had a chance to show up because I am in these spaces giving so much or performing so much for others. And so I don't know quite yet. I had given myself through the like post-op surgery like recovery. I was like, I'm gonna write a new show and it's gonna be a cabaret and like it's gonna be ready. And I think what I came from that was like, actually, what if you had nothing and excuse me, you just like let yourself explore a bit. And I think where I'm at right now is like just in a phase of exploration, checking in with self, and then trusting that there is another, I guess performance is what I would call, but another like space that's on the other side waiting, that will absolutely like encapsulate the best parts and I think the community parts of God Vessel, which I just can't help. My son is on my midheaven and Virgo in the 11th. So it's like, it will include community and connectedness, but yeah, it's I don't know what it's gonna be or look like. And I'm excited to just, yeah, see what me and, the astrology and God or whatever come up with I'm sure in a few months.
I got this phrase, cosmic marching orders, years ago from my friend, the
Mm.
astrologer Spencer Michaud, and about this idea of like how astrology can help us in these moments. But it feels like you're just waiting for your next cosmic marching orders.
Yeah, yeah. I think I am. I'm in like a 10th house perfection year and my 10th house is like Leo. So I'm like, okay, yeah, it's self time. And so we'll check in with self and see what they have to say.
That's fascinating too, knowing that you just went through this very, top surgery, and
Yeah,
you're having, a lot of physical changes to your body, thus the way that you interact in the world. And
yeah.
thinking about your 10th house being Leo, right? The sign of also, the performer, very shorthand. But thinking about Mars retrograding during over
Mhm.
that part of the chart, like literally like tearing up identity.
Yeah,
Right, so
yeah.
maybe that's a nice way to work with the Mars retrograde. It's like, "Okay, cool, like, I'm just gonna, like, let myself be torn up so I can reemerge however that looks."
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think, well, Martha Fernley, she and I have
Yeah.
like a semi regular podcast that we do. And like this whole year, we're like, what is that Mars retrograde going to be? It's like really been confounding us. And we're like, I guess just the closer and closer we get to it, it'll make itself known. And it does feel like, oh, yeah, it kind of just is doing the thing that it wants to do. Mars isn't about like intellectualizing, really. It's really about like embodying. So it's like, yeah, of course, it was harder to access like what it would be because it's just we have to presently physically be in what it's going to be. That's really funny that, like, yeah, it just kind of is happening.
Yeah, I also think another Mars word, again, I'm taking this in my conversation with, S.J. Anderson, is frustration.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
be on the lookout for that one, everyone.
Yeah. And I've got like a weird, I mean, my chart is, uh, okay, so I'll talk about my chart for a second. I'm like a Scorpio rising. I've got an Aries
Oh,
moon, and then I've
yeah.
got a Mars that's like in a day chart, also not aspecting anything. So I think like the frustration of Mars is very present with me all the time. But it's like I love it because it always like it creates something out of, it's like, the classic, like the pressure becomes a diamond. So it's like
Yeah.
in the frustration, there's always like nuggets of something that just like kind of spew out. So I think I really enjoy the Mars frustration and grinding.
Another good Mars word. It- yeah, I feel you. As someone also, right? Like I can't avoid Mars in my chart. It's so
Yeah.
obvious. It rules my sun. It for you, right? It rules your it's your rules your rising sign and your moon. So
Yeah.
you can't get away from Mars.
No, never. I've been a little nervous about this retrograde. I'm like, what's gonna happen? But whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. I'm here for it.
Yeah. I mean, we will off the podcast look at talk spend more time with your chart together.
Yes.
Um But not that you have so many astrologers in your life, but I'm just it's my reminder of like, it's
Yeah.
okay. No one fear. No one listen to this to go, "Oh my god, Mars rules important things. Am I going to perish?" No, it just
Yeah.
you just might, right? Like Mars retrograde not be the most fruitful time to launch your new career or
Yeah. Yeah.
feel like you're getting what you want during
Yeah.
this time of Mars frustrated moving
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah, which, hey, that's fine. I think that's also the nice thing about astrology too, is just remembering like it's happening to all of us. Like we're all in the same boat. Like it might be happening very personally in specific ways, but we're
Yeah.
all dealing with this Mars retrograde and a like international level. So it's like gives me a lot of solace.
On an international level, yes.
Yeah.
This is an international transit.
Yeah.
Um, I n speaking of I'm trying to make these good transitions, I'm really bad.
No,
Um,
they're excellent.
w were you a funny child? Like, speaking of going backwards.
I was like actually really shy child.
Okay.
I think maybe I might have been funnier than I realized too as I got older, but I was like really contained weirdly. Um I do then again my chart. I do have my Chiron in Leo as well as like my stellium there. So I think that's just part of it is like this wanting to be seen but not knowing how to handle it. And but I was also like a really emotional child, like very crying a lot. I got called crybaby a lot.
Oh, I feel like that's also very, like Scorpio rising, contained feels like a good word for that, like, fixed water,
Totally, yeah.
but then sometimes the dam breaks and you cry.
Yeah, I think like, childhood was I was like different. Now older, I'm like, well, of course, I was trans. And then I think like a lot of trans people talk about this too, queer people is like there's something different about you and nobody really knows what it is, but it angers people and you don't know what it is and it scares you. And so you're just like handling that the like most of your life until there's like the aha moment. So I think for me too, there was just like a lot of like a ton of fear. And I got Pluto on the first, so it's just like a lot of fear and
Mhm.
confusion and like anger and sadness and grief. And that led to me being a bit misunderstood. But it's like also a classic comedian thing where a lot of us early days were not pleasant, and humor kind of emerges to be this like way out of it and a way of like I think controlling that narrative, which we see the comedians around right now that can turn really dark, this idea of like control with comedy. But I think like the humor came from like some it's hard for Like, this is such a Scorpio rising way to say it, but like from the torture that it was just like a way to just like give me some distance from what felt really dark, like this constant darkness. And then once I found that like through line, because I didn't start doing comedy until like a decade ago, I was like, oh, this is like magic that I get to do, and I get to like distance myself a bit from this. But I think in college, more in high school, I was like trying to make my friends laugh, and that felt awesome, but I never really thought I was going to go into comedy.
So you went to, because I forget your age, but so you got into comedy, like I'm guessing shortly after college? Is that when you
Yeah, like a
finally?
few years after college. I guess I had turned I was about to turn 24 when I got into comedy. So it's like
Did,
23.
did I hear you correctly during the show say that your father is a comedian as well? Or
Yeah, yeah. So that was also like another reason why I was like, I'm not doing that, because my parents got divorced when I was younger, and then my dad kind of went to pursue this career, and so that was like, he wasn't super around because of that, and so I think it was also just like something that I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, that seems like a bad place to go. Like, it just seems like it causes heartbreak and frustration. So just never. And I did a lot of music, so I thought, I was like, I'm going to be a musician, like that's what I'm going to do. And it was kind of like comedy weirdly found me. And then once it was there, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. What I should have, yeah, this is it.
does your does your father still do comedy? Have you like bonded over that now?
Yeah, he does still do comedy. We're in two different worlds, which is really funny, but like there has been like it's been weirdly healing. I think understood him once I started doing comedy, and I was in like the comedic world more, and understanding like the mechanisms of it, and also like the culture of it. I was like, I really get what was going on, and I was able to like find a lot of healing. And I think him being understood in that way was able to release some like barrier of guilt that he had put between us sometimes, where we could just be like peers in a way, even though we don't really interact in the comedic spaces. We're both like pursuing this kind of artistry, and it just like really quelled a lot of like frustration or resentment or guilt or whatever.
Ooh, do you see that in the synastry of your charts anywhere? The like
I
comedy
actually
sync up?
have never looked at his chart.
Wow.
Yeah, but I probably should.
Okay, do that and then get back to me.
Okay, I will.
Um, and you said you got your start in Baltimore, am I?
Yeah.
Tell me
Uh,
about that. So you went from, is that where you went to university?
yeah, I went to Goucher College in like Towson, which is about like 20 minutes outside of Baltimore. Really small liberal arts school. Um, it was like 1,500 undergrads, so really tiny. But like part of why I chose it was because I wanted to go to a place that was like a little bit off the beaten path of a city, but that there was still a city nearby. And Baltimore is the most incredible, amazing place. I love it there so much. It's my favorite place in the entire world. And like my senior year, I lived off campus in this like artist warehouse that now doesn't exist because it people shouldn't have been living there, but I live there regardless. And in that, I just like met a lot of people who are part of like the music and art scene. So that way, when I graduated, I was kind of like already embedded in the scene. And I think I had like I was friends with a lot of performance artists and musicians, and like there was like some alternative comedy, but not really. And then a friend of mine, which we weren't friends yet, I had just known her because she was like a bit of like a Baltimore celebrity. She had like a column in the city paper, and she had like a band, and also did like performance art, also did like comedy. I was like in a bathroom, yelling one night, like drunk into this like bar bathroom. And she came up to me and was like, "You're really funny." And I was like, "Thank you." And she was like, "I do this like queer, trans femme comedy group," is what she said. And if you want to join in, I was like, "Sure, I'd love to." And then I got an email from her and she was like, "So the show is this night." And I was like, "What like the show?" Excuse me. And so I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll write a set." And it was like, it went as best as it could. It was like the perfect audience. It was all like women, queer people, trans people, in this basement of this like feminist art gallery space. Like, so it was like the ideal situation. And yeah, doing that, I was like, there's something I'm tapping into that goes beyond like just what music can do, because with music too, as intimate as it is, um I think there still is, the sound is what's doing a lot of the work, like you and your own voice. But it's like, it, there's I think my Scorpio rising self really enjoyed the control aspect of comedy. I'll say, I think that's what it was, like being able to maneuver the space in a room with like my words and like my presence. I was like, this is awesome.
I feel you're the comedic, prophet or channel. I
Yeah,
love because I feel like this is a through line in your work. You're
for
just
sure.
screaming in spaces and people are highly entertained and moved by you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would definitely say that's true. And then to get back to my chart again, I have like Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus all conjunct in Leo in the 10th at like later degrees. So it's like I kind of am just like screaming, screaming the things I love, being very big with my voice. And it's just like, I'm glad that the chart has been doing what it's been doing this whole time.
I just love that you weren't, like, trying to be funny, you were just screaming in a bathroom.
I really was. And like a lot of my first sets too were me not really telling jokes, just like yelling and people being like, "This is crazy." Like, what is this? Like, a lot of my friends in the comedy space were like, "I don't know what you're doing, but I like it. So I'll put you on a show." And so it took me a while, I think, to start actually writing like jokes. But I think also I've never been a joke writer. Like, it's always been performance based. Like, even doing clown now, and like when I started learning clown, I was like, "Oh, I've always been doing clown." Like, I think it just is, um I think I just, expression is what I like to do. I guess it's the best word for it.
Do you think astrology because astrology is so, I wanna say it's such a container, right? Like, do you
Yeah.
think astrology gives you a language for the screams, like, contextualizes all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I had never thought about it that way, but I think so. I think like, yeah, when you're screaming, it's hard not for it to feel like it's in a void. And then
Mhm.
having like, yeah, the container of astrology, it's like, oh, it's not a void, it's like a movement. Like, it's all a part of like this storyline somehow. Like, I get to actually, I'm speaking to something that I'm not seeing. So it's like it's being heard. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I love that. Um, can you tell me more about the podcast you do with Martha?
Yeah, absolutely. We it's so essentially it's called Planets du Jour. And what we do, it's changed. I guess it's like we're still trying to figure out exactly what we want it to be, but I think we're also welcome to it telling us what it wants to be. But at the beginning of it, we just say what the chart is of the moment. We go through like the planets and say which houses they're in, what degrees they're in, obviously what signs, and then if there's any like major aspects, we'll mention those. And then kind of like a conversation just develops out of that. And sometimes it's looking at a particular chart. Obviously, like the last couple have been a bit more political. I think we had one we were just like talking about our cats a lot. um, yeah, it's kind of like I think it's a similar to the practice of planets, but instead of like taking the chart of the moment and acting it out, we're just like acknowledging the chart of the moment and speaking. And what's fun too is like her Mercury's in Aquarius and mine is in Leo, like opposite one another.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely like whenever I listen back, whether editing or just checking in, I'm like, it is very much like a Mercury in Aquarius and a Mercury in Leo, like conversation happening. And I'm like, oh, I love that astrology just being like recorded and sent out. I think it's so funny.
Oh, that is amazing. Thinking about
Yeah.
this now too, I never thought about I didn't realize your Mercuries are opposite, and it totally
Yeah.
makes sense. Like your Mercury in Leo, just like it does more, of course, but you're
Yeah.
just kind of
No,
like
please.
screaming into the void, as you said, the sort of channel for like, right, like the what is it? Like the I'm gonna conclude this the message is the meaning. There's a certain
Yes.
thing of like, I am the thing that I'm trying to express. And then I
Totally,
just
totally.
imagine like watching, especially maybe this is why I love watching you and Martha perform so well together.
Yeah.
And because Martha then is a sort of like alien-like creature who I just
Yeah.
imagine they're just like looking, pausing, and
Totally.
then like translating to everyone.
Totally, totally. That's so funny. Last night we had like a planets rehearsal, and we've been doing this thing where Blair will choose like, or one of us will be like, act out this planet in your chart. And last night Martha was doing her Mercury in Aquarius, and she just kept like standing in the corner of the room with like her eyes wide open and just like arms up, just like looking, and like barely spoke. Also, it was just a very much like observing, frightened, and then also like resigned eventually. It was very funny. Yeah, that's so her.
Just like Martha sees all.
She really does. I know whenever she says she's she's been really passionate about people wearing masks and having like clean air in spaces and having that available.
Yeah.
And whenever she's like, I might be being too serious about this, but it's really important to me. And I'm like, I think you're probably very much correct. I think like going into the future, this is something that we're definitely going to be like just accustomed to. And so I'm listening to you for everything that you're passionate about. I will be listening, tuning in, and adhering to. Like, you're right. So I just trust her so much whenever she has an opinion.
Oh my God, same. I'm like, yeah, like the quiet person in the corner who's, analyzing everything. That's the person that
Totally.
I want to listen to at all times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my God. And do you have an episode coming up, or
Yeah,
you're
we're gonna
already
have one released tomorrow on the full moon. We finally are
nice?
back to recording. We took a big break because like I got COVID, she got COVID, and then I had my surgery, which was a 6-week like healing process. I'm still healing, but like in order to get better. So we're finally back to it and it should be more regular.
I love it. And it's Plants du Jour
Yeah, planets du jour.
and on Spotify, Apple,
Yeah.
like all the places.
Yeah.
And then what's going on with you? Anything to announce? You have your performance Saturday, November 16th of God Vessel. It's gonna be the last for a while.
Yeah. And then I'm doing the talk with you next week.
That's a big thing. This is what I'm
Yeah.
gonna use this to promote. You are going to be a guest host at the Los Angeles Astro Salon.
Yeah.
Um, I was spaced out of my own event. I'm like,
No,
"What's happening?" Oh,
no.
yeah. Which is a monthly event I do every month at the Philosophical Research Society. I host an Astro Salon. I bring in guests. Martha was my first guest.
Yeah.
Martha, I just to pause to say, is an amazing astrologer in her own right.
Yes.
Like, I love the way that she thinks about film and astrology, and of course, performance too. But like, Martha's a genius,
She
and
is.
Hollywood Star Tours on Substack. I got that right. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone, and also I did a really wonderful interview with Martha that everyone should go listen to on my Substack, Art of the Zodiac. But you are going to be co-hosting with Diana Rose, and I don't think the two of you have met in person.
No, we haven't. I'm really excited to meet
Oh,
her. I'm like
I'm
a little stunned that I'm gonna be there.
I'm so excited because I got you, and then what happened was, um, well, I knew Diana's leaving town. I was like, I have to get Diana. And
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, this is so perfect because it was one of those things where I was like, I'm just excited for the two of you to bounce ideas because in some ways, like your astrologies are very different, but I think actually they really fit well together.
Mm. I'm really excited. I'm a huge fan of hers, and I think, yeah, she's just so obviously so knowledgeable, but also is just like so there's just an awareness of like the implications of astrology that just feels so important in the space, especially when it comes to I think similar to Alice Barkley Cat, like the
Yeah.
like colonialism of it, like the race politics, I guess is politics is the wrong word, but like the racial aspects and like history of it, and it's just so nice to have those voices in the spaces, especially as like I'm still, I've been studying very seriously for like 4 years, so I'm a baby, and to be like entering into this space and have those voices so present, it's just like really comforting and also
Mhm.
really inspiring. So I'm like so psyched to even be there, and
Oh,
also love the meetups, love being there. It's so nice to have a space to just like be in astrology and speak the language and like learn. I learn so much every time I'm there. And it's just yeah, I keep trying to bring planets there to come. And I'm like, you guys, we have to go. Like, it's gonna just help us. It's been like we look forward to it every month. I was so bummed I missed the last couple of months, but I'm really excited.
okay, I'm so excited. Also, you missed last month, which fair, you were recovering.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt your absence. I
I
looked around, I was
know.
like, "Where's Martha? Where's Cam?" Like, you bring such energy into the room, and there was energy. There's other lovely people who bring a lot of energy. I'm thinking of my friends, Carrie and Rachel, shout out to them. They're
Yeah.
brilliant. But you were missed. But yeah, it's been a really rough, like, week to say the least. Or
Yeah.
week. Today's Tuesday. No, today's
Yeah.
Thursday. Oh my god, where am I? It's
No,
been a week and 2
exactly.
days. Like, what is time? Um, and I knew this going into, like, when I booked you going like, I'm like, "Okay, the election's gonna happen." I want, like, realness, but I also want humor, so I'm so
Yeah.
excited to, like, have that between you and Diana next week.
Yeah. I'm so excited to be in a space doing the thing that we're all gonna just need to keep doing for, like, truly our survival, like, mentally, physically, of just, like, coming together, having conversation, like, having, I guess perspective is gonna just be really helpful, I think, for us not to get too bogged down by, like, whatever the hell is gonna happen, and I am still very much waiting for the other shoe to drop, because it just seems like I'm like, "What's gonna happen, like, the rest of this year?" But also, I'm we have community, so it'll be okay. We have these spaces, it'll be alright. So, yeah.
There are no parents, no other adults, no one to interfere with the fun.
I ask you a bonus question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is perfect. This is bonus question time now. Okay,
Okay.
um, do you have a puppet story?
A puppet?
Puppet story. Mhm. I've
Hmm.
noticed everyone has a puppet story. I know you're a clown, but there has to be some
Yeah.
puppet somewhere.
I guess it's like it's not a puppet with me, but there is this group in Los Angeles right now called Freak Nature Puppets,
I
and
love them.
they're amazing. They're so incredible, and they're all beautiful, wonderful people. And they all I was talking to Matthew Sater, who's kind of like, I guess, the head, maybe, but like in a anyways, it's more of a collective, but he's very part of bringing everyone together. And they're all like, we aren't puppeteers, they were musicians, they're artists, and they just found like puppets were a way for them to express ideas that weren't available just like in body or just with music, and to create bigger and bigger worlds. So I guess like, yeah, I'm just a huge fan of theirs and the worlds that they create and the art that they're making, and they make everything by hand. It just feels like also going into Saturn and Aries and going into like Neptune being in Aries. It's just like such a beautiful example of what feels like a real return to craft and to like material. And so it just is, yeah, they're all so awesome. And it's also a beautiful return to like community and like collective. So I just think they're doing awesome, phenomenal things.
Okay, I went to their puppet making workshop
Oh
like
yeah.
last week, and I had no idea what to expect. Like my friend Ryan took me, and I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, this feels very much like clown puppets," right? Like the
Yeah.
sense that there's this like improv quality, and they're like, "Take garbage, make something, it's
Yeah.
funny," and
Yeah.
like I very much had that feeling like I do from going to like a planet show. Like, oh, they're trying to do
Mm.
something with this craft that's much bigger, and there's this sort of cathartic moment. Um, and I'm like low key like obsessed now with
Yeah.
I joined the puppet guild. I'm not a puppeteer. I just love
Oh,
puppets.
whoa. I didn't even know there was a puppet guild.
Oh, there is a puppet guild. And I was talking to puppet guild people and I was like, okay, so this is the idea, right? Like it's like astro drama, but with puppets. It's like planets, planets, planets,
Yeah.
but puppets. And I was like, okay, guys, puppet guild people, what if you did a collab with planets? I
Oh
was
my
like, this and you
gosh.
like make it into like a workshop and people have this like cathartic moment where they learn that they can like make puppets, channel the planets,
Yeah.
and like we're
Wow.
planting the seed in different people's brains. So
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. We should, I mean, a lot of us know all of us know the freak nature people, and some of us have worked with them. So we should Puppet Guild and Freak Nature absolutely do a collab. That's such a brilliant idea. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
And thank you for being the first person who hasn't told a really terrifying puppet story. All the puppet stories so
Okay.
far have been really like sad or
Oh
like
no.
scary or disappointing. This is just really uplifting and I needed that.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of puppets. I think I have positive like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, H&R Puffin stuff.
Yeah.
Labyrinth. Like it's just like it's so cool to see whimsy created. Like it's so crazy that we can take fantasy and materialize it and then like play with it. It's so weird.
Oh my God. I love it so much.